You're no longer needed, so leave this house. We're a family of 3, and you're not a part of it." "So I'm not family to you?" "Of course you aren't. Why would you even think that you're part of our family? We don't need someone with a low education and no abilities." Raised in a single mother's home, I worked hard after graduating high school, yet mother-in-law Sky dismissively labeled me as incompetent and not part of the family. Despite earning a whopping $500,000 and supporting this lifestyle, she's pretty bold to say such things. I wonder if they can manage the hefty living expenses without me. Well, if she wants me out, I guess I shouldn't bother. Understood. Then take care. If she hates me that much, I'll leave as she wishes. But a week later, a panicked phone call came from my pale-faced Sky. "Come back, please. We can't live without you." Having realized my importance only after I was gone, it was too late. I'm sure she's already experiencing hell, but to quell my anger, she needs to see even more of it. The moment she heard my response, Sky was speechless. I am a 29-year-old woman currently earning a decent income through investments and business ventures. I don't have a desire to squander money, so my savings just keep growing. The only significant expense I've indulged in is filial piety towards my mom. My parents divorced when I was young, and Mom raised me single-handedly. She sacrificed a lot while working part-time to bring me up, and I am truly grateful to her. Therefore, instead of going to college, I started working right after high school, sending money home, and even now I ensure she lives comfortably. I take her on overseas trips several times a year, and this filial duty has become my work motivation. One day, through a friend's introduction, I met a man. "It's really impressive that you're running a company at our age. I respect you for that," he said. He genuinely admired me, and I found myself increasingly drawn to his character. We started dating and got married a year later. Mom, who had been worried about my marriage, was truly delighted, and I felt fortunate to have married, having focused solely on my work until then. Shortly after my marriage, I was invited to a dinner at my in-laws. "Is it true you're not employed?" "Pardon?" "I heard from my son, but running your own business doesn't really make money, right? You look impoverished, and at your age, you should be working properly." Sky seemed to have a misunderstanding about me. Discussing specifics like my annual earnings would sound boastful, and flaunting my financial success isn't something I do. So I smoothly deflected her comments. I explained that I pay a substantial part of our living expenses and don't burden Lon, but I could sense that her impression of me wasn't very positive. She holds traditional views, believing that working in a large corporation is the best path. But times have changed, and that's no longer the case. Despite not causing trouble to anyone, I decided not to worry too much about it. Then, one day, Lon called me for a discussion. "I need to talk to you about something. Mom's chronic illness seems to be getting worse. Dad is worried, so he was thinking, if it's okay with you, they'd like to live with us. What do you think?" "Wait, your parents want to move in? With us?" "That's the plan." He asked casually, but for me, it was an unwelcome proposal. I hadn't been particularly liked by Sky since we got married, and since she didn't acknowledge me, living together could lead to unpredictable outcomes. "No, I don't think living together is a good idea." "What? You don't care about my parents? Couldn't you show a little more concern?" "It's not that I'm not concerned, but living together isn't the only option. Maybe there's another way." I was determined to refuse the idea of my in-laws moving in, but it was tough to make progress in the conversation with Lon. However, after I firmly declined, he seemed to understand. But then, a week later, something unbelievable happened. On my rare day off, I was at home when the doorbell rang early in the morning, and to my surprise, my in-laws had arrived. "We're coming in." "What?" It was outrageous that they showed up unannounced, and even more so, they brought a lot of luggage with them. "What's with all this luggage?" "What do you mean? It's our moving in luggage. Why are you so surprised?" "Moving in? I haven't heard anything about this." "Of course you haven't. You never tried to accept us, but it's good that our son welcomed us." Incredibly, despite our discussions and decision not to accept my in-laws, Lon went ahead and let them move in. I was truly shocked. Since their rental house was already vacated and all their belongings were brought here, there was no way to turn them out. I had no choice but to accept the situation. But from that day, my stress multiplied exponentially. I often worked from home, unlike Lon, and Sky started to complain about me. "What are you doing? Pretending to work?" "I'm not pretending, I'm actually quite busy, okay?" "Playing around and then acting like a businesswoman. You don't even do household chores. What a life." I was too busy with work to handle house chores. And I thought, Sky, who wasn't doing anything at home, should take care of them, especially since she moved in. However, she did nothing of the sort and constantly criticized me for focusing on work and not doing household tasks. "Why do you pretend to work? What's so fun about that?" "I'm not pretending. I contribute to the living expenses, so I don't think it's fair for you to complain." Though Sky fell silent at my retort, her presence was a constant irritation. It was a stressful life, and my work became even busier, leaving little time for anything else. 1 month into this routine, Sky called me to the living room. When I arrived, not only Sky, but also father-in-law and Lon were there, both looking serious. "You know, I need to ask you something suddenly. Can you leave the house?" "Excuse me?" "Well, we no longer need you around. This house is practically ours now, so you're not needed." "What do you mean by that?" "The plan was to take over this house from the beginning. There was no way I'd really marry someone ugly like you." Hearing Lon's words, I turned pale. I never imagined that Lon, whom I had trusted until now, would say something like this. Of course, I had my doubts about his selfishness when he brought his parents without asking, but the idea that the entire marriage was a scheme to take this house was utterly shocking. "So this was all about money. You didn't want to marry me, you just wanted this house? How could you plan something so terrible?" "Well, yeah, that's about it. Such a big house isn't necessary for you, right? So you should leave." The marriage and the unannounced move of my in-laws were all a plot to seize the house from me. There was no reason for me to comply. But I couldn't just stay silent after all this. "All right, I don't need this house anymore, so we can forego any property division, right?" "Yeah, that's fine. We haven't been married long. I'm not interested in anything." "Understood." He agreed, so I had him sign the contract. The divorce process was straightforward, and soon we were officially divorced. I never imagined my first marriage would end this easily, but I decided to live a happy new life. A few days after the divorce, as I was finishing various procedures, I received a call from Sky. "Hello? What is this contract?" "The contract? Are you talking about the rental agreement?" Sky seemed surprised when she contacted me, probably misunderstanding that she would get the house. But that was a leased office for my company, not a personal property. Considering asset formation, buying a house nowadays just doesn't make sense. "This house is a rental?" "It's fully furnished, so I thought it was owned." "Who said it was owned? It was a combined office and home space that I rented, so yes, it's rented." "Regardless, what's this amount? A rent of $3,000? There's no way we can pay such an amount." "Well, now that you are living here after the divorce, a new contract must be made. My company used to pay the rent, but since it's no longer an office, the future payments are your responsibility." I was about to hang up, but Sky, audible even with the phone away from my ear, kept yelling. "I've never heard such a thing. My son thought the house was owned, and you've deceived us." "Deceive? I had no such intention. You all seemed so eager to have this house, so I gave it up. After the divorce, I could have continued living here, but I wouldn't be able to sign a new rental contract, so this was a kind gesture, wasn't it?" As I said this, Sky fell silent. She acted as though I had deceived them, but I certainly hadn't. If we're talking about deception, I was the one that was deceived. They had betrayed me from the start, so they had no right to blame me. When you brought up the divorce, I wondered how you would manage the living expenses, but, well, I didn't bother researching much about strangers I was about to divorce. "Enough of this. Stop joking around. How can you enjoy tricking people like this? There's no way we can pay such an amount." I was paying that amount easily. It's pitiful that those you looked down upon earn less than you. Can't 2 working people pay it? I did it alone. I spoke with a hint of condescension, and Sky, audibly upset, fell silent. After a few seconds of silence, Sky's tone softened slightly as she spoke again. Wait a minute, so you were earning a lot? Yes, but you're realizing this now? Not to boast, but I was making around $500,000 annually. What? I never knew you were earning that much. I wasn't asked, so I didn't mention it. Bragging about how much one earns isn't something a wealthy person does, right? I have never been proud of earning money per se. As a child, I was mocked for being poor and disliked classmates who boasted about their family's wealth. So as an adult, no matter how successful I become, I resolved never to flaunt my financial success. But I had no idea you were earning that much. Oh, by the way, the rent is separate, okay? The rent was a business expense for my company, and I've saved quite a bit in a year. The money is either for savings or for trips with Mom. This year, I couldn't travel at all because of work, so most of my salary went into savings. So you must have a substantial amount for property division, right? Forget this rental house, just give me that money. The reality of my $500,000 annual savings was dangled before Sky, who had been disappointed to learn the valuable house was just a rental. She immediately latched on to this amount. Property division is essential in a divorce. You know that, right? Sure, but didn't you read the contract? What? We both signed it, right? After the divorce, we agreed not to divide any property. I didn't split my ex-husband's assets, nor do I plan to split mine. We both signed the contract. Despite discussing the no property division in front of Sky, she seemed to have forgotten, almost as if she had dementia. But when I mentioned the contract, she momentarily fell silent, then quickly resumed. That's invalid! What are you thinking? After trying to deceive me and take my house, now you're saying the contract is invalid? Stop this nonsense! If you continue to cause trouble, I'll sue for damages. Damages? You repeatedly interfered with my work and harassed me. And the marriage itself was a deceitful scheme. I could take this to a court, you know. You should reconsider your position. The mention of damages and court seemed to intimidate Sky. She didn't complain any further and remained in a flustered tone. Deciding that further conversation with Sky was a waste of time, I hung up the phone. I had already informed Lon that if he continued living in that house, a new rental agreement was needed. He tried to contact me soon after, but I ignored his calls. However, after persistent calls for over 30 minutes, I finally answered. Hello? Why are you calling so much? Are you out of your mind? Can we cancel divorce? I was really wrong. I'm sorry. Huh? That's impossible. Why should I do that? I was astonished that he who had deceived me so much was now asking to cancel the divorce. I can't make it financially. You used to pay most of the rent and living expenses, and I spent the rest on shopping, so now almost all my salary goes to credit card payments. Dad quit his job thinking we had the house secured. He quit his job? His company was doing poorly, and they offered more severance to those who retired early. Then he should manage with that severance. It's different. He foolishly bought a car with it, and now we're struggling. Realizing the absurdity of their situation, I understood my ex-husband was in dire straits. Yet it's audacious for them to seek help after having deceived me. We are already divorced and strangers now. Whatever happens to you or the house, it's none of my concern. If you continue bothering me, I'll sue for the troubles you've caused. Please don't say that. I did love you. I aimed for the house, but deep down Listen, I can't trust the words of someone who deceived me once. The world isn't so forgiving, and as an adult, you should know that. Just stop causing trouble. I said that and hung up. I turned off my phone to avoid further contact. Eventually, the calls stopped, and I have no idea how they're managing now, but I cut ties and started a new life. Since then, I haven't been in contact with Lon, and I don't know the specifics, but from what I've heard through mutual acquaintances, Lon has apparently quit his job. Apparently, he and his parents parted ways, but his credit card debts and the stress of having little money for living expenses led him to stop going to work. It seems like everything has become insignificant to him, and he has stopped making credit card payments. Currently, he is reportedly proceeding with filing for bankruptcy. As for the parents, most of the severance went to buying a car, leaving them with little cash. Apparently, out of necessity, The two started working, but due to their advanced age, finding a company willing to hire older employees has been difficult. Therefore, they seem to be living a modest life while working part-time jobs. Despite dreaming of a lavish life in a big house, they're now living the opposite. Even with their pension, it's insufficient for living, so they're working part-time, leading a frugal life. Meanwhile, my business is thriving, and I'm living with Mom, enjoying our time together. We go out for meals after work and take day trips on the weekend. It's a joyful life.